工作人员和旅客们请注意，第100-014列车直检票。
My name is Joshua Dominic. I'm an American who's been living in China for more than 20 years. I'm a translator and a publishing editor, and I'm also a member of the Global Young Leaders Dialogue. I also have a lot of opportunities to travel around China, and I like to share my experiences on social media. Quzhou is a beautiful, clean city with a lot of history and culture. It has a lot of typical Anhui-style architecture and has scenery typical of southern China. Like many Chinese cities, it's also a great mix of the new and old. But this time, I came to Quzhou to visit the Doolittle Raid. So the Doolittle Raid was a bombing raid on Tokyo and other Japanese cities in 1942. And at the time provided a great boost in morale for the Allied powers that had just started the war. But after the bombing raid, a number of problems forced the American airmen to abandon their planes and parachute over China. And they landed in areas of Zhejiang and Jiangxi provinces that were very rural. The farmers there, who had no idea where these people had come from, saw them in trouble, and they ended up saving the American airmen to great personal risk of their own, sending them to Quzhou and other areas so that they could move farther inland into China.
It's you, Rodney. This is it.
But the most shocking thing I learned was that after the raid, Japan launched a massive retaliation effort against China, which resulted in 250,000 Chinese civilians losing their lives. I couldn't believe the size of the number when I saw it. It was just amazing. And Quzhou alone lost between 40 and 50,000 people. And at the time, Quzhou only had around a little over 100,000 people in total. Today, it's hard to imagine that this kind of tragedy came to such a small, quiet Chinese city. And I was actually curious what moved these farmers to save strangers, these American pilots that landed in their backyard. So I decided to see if I could find the answer. I wandered the streets of Quzhou. I experienced taxis stopping at crosswalks. I experienced young people willing to help me with directions. I also experienced people just willing to lend a hand and, quick with a smile. And after a while, it wasn't hard to imagine that these could be the descendants of the same farmers that saved those American pilots so many years ago. But it wasn't until my visit to the Confucius Temple that I realized it's the values that we embrace that make us who we are. It's our common instinct as human beings to help those in need and do the right thing that inspired the American pilots, as well as the Chinese farmers who saved them so many years ago. It's also the same thing I experienced on the streets of Quzhou. And seeing the massive statue of Confucius across from it, I'm not sure if it's the kindness of the Chinese people that came first, or the teachings of Confucius to care for one another. But today, they both are alive and well.
们在这也拍个照片留个念，可以吗？
很好，
好吗？
很好，很好。
好，
我们大家一起来。
好，我们就一起来。
你这个手机里的照片。所以那个时候呢，对这个事情呢，应该来说呢，两个国家呢同仇敌忾。